overall workflow is very simple. In order to create a prototype, we got to know where we're going if we're going to make this workflow efficient. And what I mean by that is we need to have a mock-up or a wax-up. In docs, the old adage of or the days of who's paying for this? Is the patient paying? Just eat the cost. If you want to do more full arch dentistry, just do the mock-ups. You and your technicians can do a mock-up so quickly and so efficiently that honestly, the days of the expensive wax-up are just gone. And these can be done quickly. Now, once we have our mock-up and we know where we're going, that helps us determine our prep design, whether it's veneers or crowns. And when it comes to prep design, it really comes down to two principles. One, where is the tooth in the mouth? Where do I want the tooth to go? And what color is the tooth in the mouth right now? And what color do I want it to be? That dictates what type of preparation you are going to do, whether it's a minimal prep, no prep, mild, moderate veneer, full coverage restoration. It all is based on those two principles. Hence why ortho is so important on full arch dentistry. But what we're going to do is we're going to use our mock-up and our preps, and then to create a prototype, we're literally going to merge them together. And by we, I mean not you. We're going to have the lab do it. Eventually, if you want to do this stuff yourself, you can do it yourself, but don't upset the apple cart and don't change your existing workflow. Have the lab do it for you. I promise you it's easier to learn that way. Learn and master the manufacturing, then add in the design. So what does this look in real world? In real world, these are my kind of patients. Like the worn dentition patient is one of the easiest cases because it's usually multidisciplinary, but these are often the cases many new clinicians are afraid to tackle. They're nervous because they're worried about messing up the VDO, yet at the same time, they have no problem doing a denture and opening somebody's VDO by 3, 4, 5, 6 millimeters. But for some reason, when it's in ceramics, people lose their mind. Now, the key is knowing where you're going, because in these types of cases, oftentimes we've had passive eruption, the occlusal table scheme is all a mess, and we have to open things up. And so I love using ortho, but the problem is you have to know where you're going with a mock-up. So I'm going to do a mock-up, or my lab's going to do the mock-up, and I'm going to send that to my orthodontist because I want the teeth to fit into that mock-up. So a lot of times I get my cases back like this. They look super wonky. There's an open bite. We warn the patient like, hey, it's going to look really bad before it looks good. It's just like orthognathic surgery. But from here, now we had our original mock-up. Now I'm going to have the lab do a really detailed mock-up that's going to be used more for my prep design. So this is the mock-up that is going to set the foundation. And what I mean by that is multifactorial. It sets the foundation from where we're going. It sets the foundation of how we're prepping. It sets the foundation of what materials we're using, and it sets the foundation for an efficient same-day 3D printed temporary workflow. And you'll kind of see what I mean here. Because when we have our design, then we go to prep day. And all we're going to do is merge those two files, because if I don't have that pre-designed mock-up, this workflow takes a lot longer. And then from there, once they're merged, our lab is literally going to send us an STL file that we're going to print. And so we'll print these temporaries. And I kid you not, you guys, I cannot make temporaries out of bisacryl that look like this. And these aren't even polished. This was just rough trying. But the reason this is so powerful is because now it allows me to work out the occlusion. If you're worried about opening the video, test them out in these prototypes and see if they break things. Does their jaw have issues? Are the muscles working? Are the phonetics good? Do we like the colors? All of this thing, because we're going to work all of this out now, because when we go to restoring or actually going to the final manufacturing process, it kind of eliminates all the stress and then allows you to have fun. And in my office, we do most of our own milling if it's a milled case. So we'll mill these cases and I don't worry about it because we already worked everything out. We know the margins are good. We know the occlusion's good. And honestly, there's very, very minimal adjusting because it was all worked out in the temporaries. So we're able to go from our ceramics here and then go to the delivery, and consistently you get a predictable result because we used prototypes. We knew where we were going with the mock-up, and we were able to follow that mock-up, make our prototypes, and then we were able to deliver it. So in reality, how do we really do this though? So let's talk about that, because these things are gorgeous. They are so cool, and you'll see all these cool things on Instagram on them, but you can do individual units like this. Like these are temporaries. This is printed material. This is not a final ceramic. and you look at the marginal integrity and you're able to see all this, it just blows my mind. So to do this on Monday morning, let's talk about the workflow, because the workflow is really simple. There's 3 basic components. We've got our digital imaging, which is going to consist of 3 main things. That's going to consist of our intraoral cameras, our DSLRs or photography. It's going to include our intraoral scanners, and it's going to introduce 3D imaging like cone beam. The second aspect is digital design. And this is the aspect I want everybody who's starting off to offload to the people who know how to do it best until you're ready to implement it yourself. So offload it. And then the thing I do want you to do, the third component, is digital manufacturing. That is the fun stuff. Like, that's the printing. That's where your team is going to have a blast and you get to see the immediate results. And I promise you, you're just going to have so much fun with it. I can't even get over that. But let's talk about the digital imaging. The digital imaging that we need for digital temporaries or prototypes are really just the 2. We need photography and intraoral scanning. So we're going to use the STL scan and we're going to use the photos in order to create our mock-up. So these are the 3 things. So if you can take a picture, memorize this, you need to send these 3 things to your lab. We are almost always good at taking intraoral scan or impression, because if you don't, you have nothing to build it on. But many of us don't take good studio photos or good photos because we don't understand how it's being utilized. So these 3 studio photos are the ones I want us to start sending to the lab every mock-up cosmetic case that we do at a bare minimum. Now, if you're sending a lot more, awesome. But at a bare minimum, we got to send these. So when we look at this smile full face, this is important because it doesn't matter how the teeth look on an articulator. We've all seen that with a denture. It looks great, but then we put it in patient's mouth and we're like, what the heck? It looks terrible, because the teeth have to fit into the face. So we have to analyze the face. Where do we want to go with all this? And then we want to use the same photo to figure out where the midline is. The midline is not based on the nose. If you start looking at people's noses, they look really goofy. The midline is based on the interpupillary distance. And dentists, quit overthinking this. We've got a lot of leeway, like literally up to, most patients, even up to 4 millimeters, they're okay with. If you don't believe me, look at the old pictures of Tom Cruise, who won like the handsomest man on the planet, and his central incisor is like the midline of his face. Cants are a bigger deal, but this photo gives us all that. It also shows us how the teeth fit into the face and the lip line and so much more, but this is what our lab's going to utilize. Now, the photo that many of us forget to take is the lips at rest. And this is a critical error when we do this, because the lips at rest honestly is showing us how much incisive display the patient has currently. Because really, on a worn case or any case, patients may want longer or shorter teeth. And if we don't have this photo, we don't know what direction are we going. Are we going occlusally or incisally? Are we going apically? Like, what direction are we going? So this changes based on men or women. So women show more than men. Men show less than women. As we get older, we show less of our teeth as all of our tissue starts sagging. And all of this plays into it. So this photo tells the technician which direction. And many labs will actually ask us on our prescription based on the incisal edge currently, do you want to keep it at that? Do you want to go above that, lower than that? But you want to work with labs that have that as a kind of a test, like they're asking you the right questions to help set you up for success. Don't just send them a scan and one photo and say, hey, make me a mock-up, and when it's not great, don't get upset. Now, the photo most of us don't take is the full retracted in occlusion. And we don't take this because most of us don't design, or most of us are used to analog workflows. Because this photo, which always reminds me of the Predator, you know, if you know, you can see it. But this photo is literally our digital articulator. So with this and an STL scan, we can overlay everything. And now we've created a virtual patient. So now we can go and design these teeth. So the retracted in occlusion, full face smile in occlusion, and then lips at rest are your critical core 3 photos you need to send to your lab or you need to work with, because you're going to use all of these photos, or your lab is, and we're going to merge these into software. And this is where our team doesn't understand how all of this stuff is being used, because all of it's getting compiled into a digital file and a library, and then we're doing designing. And the second component of this whole workflow is digital design. And like I said, I don't want you to overload yourself on figuring this out. There is a workflow for every single person. Okay, there's something for everyone. But in the beginning, you already have a workflow. It's called your lab. Use your lab. Every lab knows how to do this. Use your lab, okay? Some point in your evolution of as you're designing and you're doing more and more, you may want things faster because you're like me and forget to send it, or you want a little bit more control. And then eventually you may start importing and doing more of this in office and having more of your team members start doing it. So you get more of a vertical integration. But at the beginning, let's just stick with our lab. Now, I love my labs, and my labs probably like me more now. I mean, I do almost all my dentistry is digitally based in some form or fashion. And we do a ton of manufacturing in office, whether it's 5-axis milling or 3-axis milling, 3D printing, digital press stereolithography. But my lab bill right now is higher than it's ever been because we're doing more volume of emotional-based dentistry. And what I love about the 3D printed workflow with my labs is I can pre-schedule all of this. So when I know we're having the prep, I can let my lab know and they're waiting for the files. And this is important because time is money, right? That's one of the 3 components that people make decisions based on and what I value. So I want this to be quick and hands-off. And so if I pre-schedule it, then it becomes really simple. The other aspect I love is having preferred tooth forms or tooth libraries, because then I start figuring out what style of teeth I like. It's just like dentures, you guys. Like, you all had your favorite tooth form, I'm assuming, at some point. This is the same thing. You start getting these cool designs. And a lot of labs these days, this is Rodental's lab. Like, they have some really cool ways to virtualize. So they digitized all of their tooth libraries so you can see what these mock-ups look like, what a Hollywood, what a natural, is this going to be a functional detail function? And you just click all of these tooth forms and you're able to see in real time what a mock-up would look like with that tooth library. And you can then base the patient's photos, those smile photos you took, and compare that to these tooth libraries and pick the one that is most appropriate for that patient. Remember, it's not about the teeth, it's how they're fitting into their face. So this is just a really, really cool tool to be able to use. So once you start figuring out, okay, what tooth form, how do we enter all this? So I'm going to take my scans, I'm going to take my photos, and now I'm going to start pushing this over and I'm going to work with my lab. And every lab is a little different. I encourage you to work with a lab that truly understands these workflows and how dentists work, and they're open to communication. And so, in this case, I'm using Row as my predominant mock-up and prototype designer for me. And so you basically just enter the patient's information. But what's amazing about this, you get to select, am I doing a trial, diagnostic mock-up? What am I going to do? So we're doing a mock-up. I want to prove this. I want to see what it looks like before we go to final. I always want an exocad file because I work with exocad, but you could just get the STLs. You're going to tell the lab how many teeth I'm going to do. Get away from the 6 to 11. We don't want to do that. And then you're going to pick the anatomy scheme. Like, most time I'm just matching, do you want canine guidance, functional group? What do you want? Your contacts, do you like light? Do you like firm? And so you kind of got to play around and figure out what your preferences are with your lab, but eventually you'll start figuring out what you want. And then the cool part is I get to pick my library. I know what I want based on my patient's photo, and I know I want Hollywood for this case. And then it gives me a preview of what it looks, just so I can verify, hey, this is the tooth form that I want. And then from there, what I love is that I get the ability to pick the incisal edge. So this is that lip at rest. How does it go? And then the gingival contours, because many of our labs like to overdo the gingiva or they move the gingiva. I want to tell the lab, don't touch the gingiva because we're not doing crown lengthening. And then all we're going to do is submit how we did our bite. We're going to submit our files, all of the photos, and we've got this nice little portal to kind of wrap everything up, and then we submit it. Like, it couldn't be easier. It's a checklist, which is why I like this style workflow versus a lab that maybe does like the paper, just fill out what you want. I want something that's going to ensure I've entered all the data that my technician is going to need. That's critical. Okay. It helps streamline everybody's workflow because your technicians' time, money, and how they feel is also important to them. Okay. So once they get all this, and this was for a mockup, because remember the first step is doing a mockup. I want to have that data so the designer's already done the design. So when we do the preps, we're ready to go.